Welcome to Identiverse 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRisk TV studio on the expo floor at the Mandalay Bay Conference Center in Las Vegas. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me for this interview is Ashley Stevenson, VP of Product and Solutions Marketing at DigiCert. How you doing, Ashley?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Adrian.
Yeah, great to have you here. We just opened the expo floor. We've got food, we've got drinks, everybody's come in. We got the show started.
You can feel the energy out there. I think there's around 3,000 people here and everybody's out.
Yep, over 3,000 people, I think. So yeah, this is identity is very interesting to me. I've not been to a lot of conferences that weren't general topic, like the larger Black Hat and RSA. And coming to learn, like there's a whole acronym soup I'm not even familiar with.
Yes.
And I've been in security since 2001. And I feel like I'm behind on identity, so I'm learning a lot here. What we're talking about today, I'm a little bit more familiar with. So for people that don't know DigiCert, let's just start there.
Yep.
I think people have probably heard of DigiCert in terms of the certificate business. Tell me a little bit about what you guys do.
Yeah, so DigiCert is a leader in global trust. But what does that mean in the real world, right? So let's go through some scenarios. If you're on your computer in your browser and you're trying to load up your bank app or your bank website because you want to make a transfer, first question is, how do you know that what's rendering in your browser is actually coming from the website that is the server from your bank and not from a rogue server that's delivering something to try to capture your credentials to go steal your identity?
Yeah.
When you think of software, how do you know that a software update that's pushed to your iPhone or a software update or a firmware update that is pushed to a medical device, how do you know that that software is trusted, hasn't been tampered with, hasn't had malware injected? Today, when you look at content, how do you know that that content didn't come from an AI? It wasn't AI generated, it wasn't a deep fake, that it was actually came from the person or the organization that you think it came from. And so, digital trust is how we solve all of these things. And we do that from a technology perspective. We do that with asymmetric cryptography. And that's the public-private the key pairs that actually support that. Now those key pairs are a part of a broader public key infrastructure, or PKI, there's an acronym that we're probably all familiar with, right? Yep. And so those work with PKI. And then parts of the crypto, along with parts of identity attributes of a server or a person and other policy pieces of information, then go onto a certificate, onto a PKI certificate. And then that certificate is installed in a web server or on a laptop for connecting to VPN, what have you. And so once all of that's done, then you need to manage all of these certificates because you're going to have hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of these certificates. So management of that across the ecosystem is also something that we do for our customers, which are 80% of the Fortune 500, our DigiCert customers. Now, as far as preparing for the future, I just came out
80%?
80%, wow. Yeah. Okay. I just came back from some of the keynotes out there where they're talking about, and I already see a theme of like agentic AI or agents doing everything on our behalf. Friendly worker bots, right?
Yeah. Those are going to need,
exactly.
How are they going to connect?
So going back to the how questions, how are we going to trust an agent that's working on our behalf to know that it comes from a trusted place and that it's going to do what we want and that we can shut it down if we need to? And these technologies help solve those problems now for things like load balancers and web servers, and also in the future for agentic AI bots and all different types of connected devices.
Yeah, it's you and me are obviously old enough to remember a time when the internet was not all HTTPS, when the web was not all HTTPS. And shockingly, I think recently I went back and looked, that only happened in 2014 that we really got the vast majority. And I think it was finally Google saying, you know what? Yeah. Your search rank is going to suck if you're not defaulting to HTTPS.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like it's only been 10 years, but I think there's a whole generation that's never heard, look for the green lock icon, right?
Yeah.
It's all invisible to them.
Just assume, right?
Until someone forgets to renew a cert and you get that warning page, right?
That's right.
It says this page is not secure.
And that browser makes it very
difficult.
You got to
hunt for some buttons to show it anyway, right?
That's right.
So it becomes very visible when it fails.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we do to help prevent outages, because certificates are issued, right, and they have a time frame for when they'll expire.
Yeah.
And so As opposed to many identity and access management things of the world, access might be provisioned and then it's out there until it's deprovisioned, or you have to check on it and attest and recertify you still need access. When it comes to a PKI certificate, it has an expiration date.
Yeah.
And if that date is past due, whatever that thing is doing is going to stop working, right? So a couple of months ago, I think there was a Chromecast outage all across Chromecast.
I remember that.
That was an expired certificate. A couple of years ago, there was, or a year and a half, yeah, go ahead.
And some of the problem there is people are like, was it intentional? Are they shutting down the product? Because they're no longer making Chromecast products. They quit making them. So we knew it was discontinued. They weren't going to sell new ones. But that can very easily be misconstrued by your customers, right?
Could be.
I've seen a lot of these just honest failures, like somebody was supposed to replace the certificate and didn't. All of a sudden, their customers are moving to competitors.
Yep.
They think the company's shutting down their services. And too late, the company's like, whoa, wait.
Yeah. Outages can cause major problems, either punitive financial or financial problems, relationship with your customers, your brand reputation, all of those things. In fact, a year and a half or two, Skylink, Elon Musk's satellite system was down, and he tweeted, sorry about that, it was an expired cert on a base station, right?
Yeah.
So what do we have to do to address this? So we're here at Identiverse. The world of identity and access management deals with identity management, right? It's the management of the identities. The access management is the runtime piece. So we have to do management of all of our PKI certificates in the same way. Identity calls it identity lifecycle management. In the PKI world, it's sometimes called certificate lifecycle management, but it's the lifecycle management, and automation is a big part of that. But before we even get to automation, we've got to discover everything that we have in our enterprise, take a massive inventory, get a central database. From there, we need to be able to assign owners distributed of who owns all the different pieces of PKI, right? And set up notifications so that if something's going to expire, they get a notification on a Slack or a text or whatever before it expires. So this is part of certificate lifecycle management that we offer in our platform. And then you get to the automation, and there's two main pieces of that. The first piece is I need to reach out to my certificate authority and renew 100 or 100,000 certificates and get them in my hands. But the second piece, which is harder, is I need to be able to then provision those certificates to do the jobs they need to do on the web servers, on the computers, on the load balancers, to the agents of AI.
They're not all web servers, right?
That's
like a lot of things need certificates deployed to them.
The software, for signing software, I need to deploy that so the people who are compiling software can sign with something that is current and eventually quantum safe. So all that automation has to take place and get out there. And when that happens, it's going to prepare. We're doing that because we need to prepare our customers in the world for all the change that's coming to PKI, which is shorter certificate life cycles and the threat of quantum computing.
Yeah, and those shorter certificate life cycles. I'm proofreading a book for someone right now, and there is a mention in there that I flagged where he talks about certificates having 1 year life. And I'm like, I'm not sure that's been true for a while now.
Right now, they're just over a year.
Yeah.
Typically, for a public trust certificate that you would think of for a website, right?
Okay, I thought we'd moved to 90 days already.
No, not by what's required from the CA browser form, right? And so they are on their way to, by 2029, March of 2029, it's going to be 47 days.
47 days.
And between now and then, it's going to step down over the years until it gets to there. Yeah, month and a half. Now, here's the interesting thing. The certificate life cycle will be 47 days. But there's a thing with DNS, and this is one of the things that we just recently launched. DNS itself, if you think about it, and for your audience, who may have heard of it but don't know exactly, think of your phone and your contacts. When you're going to call someone, you look up someone by name, and that's associated to a phone number because we don't
remember phone numbers anymore.
If I left my phone in an Uber, there's probably two numbers I could remember, right?
Yeah.
And so DNS is that at its beginning stage. It is the ability to map a name to an IP address, right? But DNS does so much more. Two other really important things is it is part of what does distributed denial of service attack blocking and preventing. It also routes a huge percentage of the traffic around the internet based on where it's trying to go and help it get there. But here's the thing, there's a really important connection between DNS and PKI. So we know that PKI, we talked about PKI and how it develops that trust of all those things. Now DNS has two things, as a name and an address. That name is also an attribute in that certificate, which is a very important piece of the certificate of the host name or the software, whatever it is, right? And so there has to be trust between those two. And the way that that trust is established is that the certificate authority reaches out and says, hey, prove to me that, adrianshow.com belongs to you. Prove to me you own that domain.
Yeah.
So you have to reach out and update a record there, and the CA sees it and says, okay, you're validated for another year. So there's actually two different timelines there taking place: the validity of the certificate and the validity of the validation. They call it domain control validation.
Yeah.
Prove to me that you control that domain. Because if somebody goes in and changes that address, going back to the very first sign of, do I know that that website is actually my bank's? If they can change that address and I hit that name and it goes to the rogue site, going back to before HTTPS, if it wasn't, right? So there's issues there. So all that to say, the DNS validity of DNS verification, when it gets to 47 days for a certificate, is going to be 10 days for DNS. And so, to update, to do that domain validation, right? And the reason for this is all about security. Right. Because the longer a certificate's out there, the more surface area it has for attack. Parts of the revocation pieces of PKI don't work the way that they should. They have privacy issues, they have other issues, and scalability. So the forums are saying, the authorities, if you will, are saying, we're going to shorten that cycle and spin that wheel a lot faster for having to renew.
Well, I think one of the other benefits we're going to see is people are going to be forced to automate it, to fully automate this.
That's right.
It's going to get people still doing it manually. That results in these situations where stuff goes down because somebody forgot to do it, or it wasn't on their schedule, or the stuff that humans aren't good at, right?
That's right.
I think it will finally force everyone to realize, okay, this just needs to be fully automated, and we're going to need a system to do that. And I presume that's what the One platform does. Earlier you were talking about having a system to gather and analyze everything that's in the environment and then manage that that life cycle, right? That certificate life cycle.
So the DigiCert ONE platform does that, and now with this new announcement, this new launch, it does it for PKI and DNS together. You may be surprised, your audience may be surprised to learn that a lot of these steps today for organizations are manual. Like, there's literally a PKI team and a DNS team, and at the highest level, they're sending tickets to each other to manually update records, right?
Yeah.
And then at the next level of maturity, they're using kind of an API where tokens are spread all over the place, and there's no fine-grained authorization. And so, if an attacker were to get a hold of that API key, can come over and update anything they want in DNS, which would be bad. Yeah. So what we announced and what we're doing with the PKI plus DNS is saying we have all that granular authorization, it's native on the same platform, it's simplified, and we're automatically doing all that updates. So you can automatically update your PKI certificates and your domain validation at the same time. The PKI certificates, a lot of people are still using spreadsheets to try to manage when
I believe it.
And that's leading to the outages.
I believe. And domain registrations too. Every now and then we see somebody screw that up and forget to re-register a domain name. It's amazing to me, and they'll be like Fortune 500 companies sometimes too.
But the thing that's really changing here is the speed at which everything is going to have to be updated.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with something that's over a year, okay. When you're dealing every 47 days, you cannot afford to do that manually anymore. You have to automate.
Yeah. And it's I mean that's going to be in the middle of someone's vacation. That's going to be in the middle of somebody's going to have something better to do, and it's
funny that you say that. One of our customers had an outage on Christmas Eve. He's on the phone call bridge trying to troubleshoot while he's trying to read his daughter a Christmas story, and it turns out that it was an expired internal self-signed certificate that took a whole bunch of
cert.
Yeah. So. You're right on about that.
Yeah, managing PKI in-house is not for the faint-hearted.
No, you need automation, you need systems and governance and process to do that properly.
Yeah. And then with all the updates to quantum algorithms, that's another thing we have to catalog and track as well, right?
Quantum is huge. So if you look at what's happening with PKI right now in a zoomed out lens, basically PKI is undergoing a renaissance. It's probably a once in 20 to 30 year event where all these different things are coming at PKI from external forces causing the change. So we talked about 47 days.
Yeah.
That's from the folks who administer the public trust certificates. Chrome is doing another thing that's going to require people to reissue a bunch of certificates on this tiny little detail of how the certificate is allowed to be used. And then we've got quantum computing, where a quantum computer can do the amount of equations I think Google's Willow could do in less than 5 minutes, the amount of computations that it would take the fastest non-quantum computer the whole length of the universe to try to do, right? So when you turn that on today's algorithms, RSA and Diffie-Hellman, it's going to break them, right? And so we have to have, NIST has already put out, we already have quantum safe algorithms. But this, speaking of the pressures coming in on PKI, that's another thing that's going to make everybody have to touch every single PKI certificate.
They're all going to have to be regenerated.
And then another 47 days they'll have to all go over again, right? So that wheel is spinning really quickly. And so everybody needs to implement automation, put the policies in place. But at the same time, they're going to come out of this on the other side with everything that's safe from quantum computers and actually with spending less money, lowering costs
and less outages.
Automation, because the automation is there, and so either they'll directly save costs or they won't have to increase their team, but they'll increase the amount of stuff they're doing by 10 or 100 times.
So you're giving a talk here at Identiverse. Tell me a little bit about that, because I don't know much about it yet.
Great. So here we are at Identiverse, and my background is both in traditional identity and access management and PKI, so I'm trying to bring those two worlds together. And so the title of the talk is called Security Matchmaker, about IAM and PKI coming together, and the subtitle is How PKI-based credentials and IAM can save the digital world. And that's a reference to the quantum threat that's coming up.
Right.
Because if you have experience with regular identity things, I would think, like, have you ever used a passkey?
Yeah.
And you take a QR, picture of the QR code? Well, that's public key cryptography. That's public-private key pairs behind it. Have you ever heard of or used like a YubiKey, like your second factor? That's a private key on there, and the public key is registered so you can sign in. Those are not quantum safe at this point. Those will have to be rotated into quantum safe. If you're a fan of single sign-on anywhere, where you sign in once and you don't have to keep entering your passwords, SAML, the security assertion markup language behind that, embedded in that are the key pairs for signing and encrypting those transactions. So everywhere, PKI is everywhere, and so the talk is going to be about, one, how embedded PKI is already today in the world of identity, two, how quantum is going to affect all of that, and three, how the two can work together in new ways to solve the problems of agentic AI and passwords and things like that. So.
But it seems like all those things are going to come together to just help people better manage their stuff anyway. You know, because I think any one of those three things, that's a can I'll kick down the road for another 10 years or 5 years or something like that. All three together, we got to get this taken care of.
Yeah.
Right.
It becomes an existential threat if it's not dealt with. But on the other hand, it's an opportunity, as we talked about. So. Yeah.
Well, Ashley, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
I enjoyed the conversation. I probably won't get to your talk. I'm going to be pretty busy tomorrow, but I hope it goes very well.
Thank you. And by the way, I forgot, the talk is at tomorrow, 4:35.
4:35.
Breakers J, for anyone who's listening. I think there's something in it for everyone, so I invite everyone to come see it.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right. To find out more about DigiCert, you can visit securityweekly.com/DigiCert IDV. For all Identiverse 2025 coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance, you can visit securityweekly.com/IDV. Thanks again, Ashley.
Thank you.